We are so close to the 2026 NBA season. I could taste it. We're about a month away, but I still have off-season content for you guys. And in this video, we are going to look back at every single free agency class from 2024 all the way to 2000. And I'm going to give you guys the worst free agency deal signed in that summer. You guys know I'm a Knicks fan, and man, was this depressing to do. They may be the worst team ever handing out free agency contracts, and these are going to be just the overall length of the deal included as well. So somebody may have signed a terrible one-year deal, but there's really no such thing as a bad one-year deal. And I really try to pick for each year a player that switched teams, but some years there really wasn't like terrible deals, and there was just god-awful re-signings. So for those years, I'll mention that type of deal. And if you guys do enjoy the video, I'd appreciate you dropping a thumbs up. Shout out to Giraffe Mark. He did this for the MLB. Go check out his channel. Makes very similar content to I do over in baseball. Link to him will be in the description. So you can actually go with two different guys for the 2024 free agency period. You can give an honorable mention to KCP, who the Orlando Magic have already traded, but no, it's an easy one. It's going to be Paul George, who signed a 4-year max deal to lead the LA Clippers for the Philadelphia 76ers. I mean, yeah, this is an easy one already. Paul George is going to be 35 years old in the 2026 NBA season, and he's making roughly 30% of the Philadelphia 76ers cap space. And not just this year when he's 35, also when he's 36 and he's 37. Hindsight is 2020, but the 76ers definitely should have just gave out that $50 million to multiple role players for this team. How much better would this team look next year if they had Isaiah Hartenstein, an elite backup big next to Joel Embiid, Derrick Jones Jr., who could be a perfect power forward between Joel Embiid, that is one of the best perimeter defenders in the sport, and you could have also signed Najee Marshall as well and had some size on the perimeter. All three of those guys would still be making less than what Paul George will be making next year. I would say this is going to be one of the worst free agency contracts that we're going to mention. I mean, in terms of overall dollar amount, yes, it will be, because these free agency contracts will get larger and larger as we get closer to present day. But I guess Paul George still has a chance to turn this around, because some of the previous free agents do not have that chance because these are obviously completed. So in the beginning of this, I mentioned that I would like to pick players that switch teams, like Paul George from the Clippers to the 76ers. For 2023, you can give a mention to Bruce Brown, who signed a 2-year, $45 million contract with the Pacers, but it had a team option for year number 2 that the Raptors picked up. They were able to use that to get Brandon Ingram at the 25 deadline. You could talk about Grant Williams, who the Dallas Mavericks had to trade a future unprotected pick swap to go out and absorb him with their mid-level exception. They traded him a few months later for PJ Washington, but those deals honestly aren't like franchise changers like this one. Jeremy Grant signing a 5-year, $160 million contract to return to the Portland Trail Blazers when they had a chance to get out of this deal, because they knew that Damian Lillard requested a trade before this would have been finalized. We all assumed that they wanted to bring Jeremy Grant back to build a competitive team around Damian Lillard. So if you were going to enter into a rebuild and trade away Dame, why give Jeremy Grant over $30 million a year? Grant was a fine player in 2024 off of this deal, but he only played 54 games. He averaged 21 points and shot 45% from the field, but this is for a Blazers team that went 21-61. And then in 2025, he played 47 games and shot 37% from the field. And there's still 3 years, roughly $100 million left remaining on this contract. I'm sure Joe Cronin would have liked to have this one back. So yeah, in hindsight, some of the 2022 contracts weren't great. Bradley Beal got the Supermax, but the Wizards were able to trade him. Zach LaVine got a 5-year, $215 million deal from the Chicago Bulls. That one didn't age too well. But a lot of those bad contracts, these players were able to get traded. Yusuf Nurkic got traded. Anthony Simons got traded. I'm going to actually go with a much smaller deal, but I think was just a horrible deal to begin with. And that's the Dallas Mavericks signing JaVale McGee to a 3-year deal worth $17 million. This is the same Dallas team that opted not to re-sign Jalen Brunson, who turned into an all-NBA second-team caliber player, a top 5 MVP vote getter, and one of the best scorers in the NBA, who would have been a great co-star next to Luka Doncic. Yes, they were able to still get Kyrie Irving, but we could play that game with, yeah, they traded away Luka Doncic, but yes, they were still able to get Cooper Flagg. And 1 year after JaVale McGee signed this contract with the Dallas Mavericks, they waived him. And this is before Dallas had Derek Lively or Daniel Gafford. Their rim protection in the 2023 season was so bad. There's a reason why they didn't even make the play-in tournament that year. McGee played in 42 games. He played around 8.5 minutes a night and averaged 4.5 points, 2.5 rebounds. He started 7 of those 42 games, but those 7 were in the first 9 games of the season and fell to the rotation completely about a month into the year. So this one's going to take the crown for 2022. A couple bad contracts were handed out in the 2021 offseason. You could give a mention to Lonzo Ball, but honestly, some of that stuff was out of Chicago's control. It was Lonzo's health, but he only gave them basically half a good year. I mean, Kyle Lowry could definitely be mentioned here. A 3-year, $85 million sign and trade from Toronto to Miami just to dump him for Terry Rozier 2 years later. On a honorable mentions to Devontae Graham in New Orleans and Spencer Dinwiddie in Washington, but I'm going to go with the New York Knicks, who are not going to be mentioned here just once. They're going to be mentioned here a ton, where they gave Evan Fournier 4 years, $73 million. This was a Knicks season coming off a surprising year where Tom Thibodeau, Julius Randle, RJ Barrett, and Derrick Rose led this team to the 4th seed in the Eastern Conference, bringing the Knicks to the playoffs for the first time since 2013. Tibbs won Coach of the Year, Randle won Most Improved, and they wanted to add some shooting in the offseason, so they go out and sign Evan Fournier, who played 80 games for the Knicks in year 1 of this deal in 2022. He shot 41% from the field, 38% from 3, and averaged 14 points. In 2023, though, he played just 27 games, started 7 of them, shot 33% from the field, averaged 6 points. Guys like RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, Quentin Grimes took his spot in the rotation, and he was completely out of the Knicks rotation in 2024. They used his matching salary to go out and get Bojan Bogdanovic. There was a $19 million team option on the final year of this deal, so it was essentially a 3-year contract, but this probably takes the cake for the worst contract given out in the 2021 free agency class. 2020 also has some interesting bad contracts, but I'm going to go with Gordon Hayward, who opted out of his player option with Boston, which was surprising to me, at least at the time. I thought he was going to sign a longer deal with Boston, get more guaranteed money, maybe with a less AAV, but no, Charlotte comes out of nowhere and gives him a 4-year deal worth $120 million. Did Charlotte not learn their lesson from the 2010s when they gave out some really bad contracts? Gordon Hayward was coming off a 2020 season, playing 52 games, averaging 17.5 points. Kind of looked like the old Gordon Hayward because he suffered that gruesome injury in game 1 of the 2018 season, his first year in Boston. And Gordon Hayward in 2021 played 44 out of 72 possible regular season games for the Hornets, averaging 19.5 points. In 2022, he played 49 games for the Hornets, back to an 82-game season. The Hornets did make the play-in tournament, but that doesn't make this contract worth it whatsoever. He would go on to play 50 games in 2023 and then play 25 games in the final year of this deal in the 2024 season before Charlotte traded him to OKC. At least they got Trey Mann in return from this trade, but $120 million to get 168 regular season games across 3.5 seasons. What were we doing, Charlotte? Now let's go back to the famous 2019 free agency class where you had so many massive deals left and right. So like I said, I didn't want to say anybody that re-signed with their team if I didn't have to. You can mention that Tobias Harris could be up there. He got 5 years, $180 million from Elton Brand and the Philadelphia 76ers, but I'm going to actually have a two-way tie here between another Sixers deal, signing Al Horford from the Boston Celtics. Philadelphia thought Al Horford was one of the few players in this league that could stop Joel Embiid, so they're like, you know what, let's put him next to Joel Embiid. It didn't work out whatsoever. It was a disaster. Philadelphia lost Jimmy Butler in that free agency period, so they basically swapped Jimmy's money with Al Horford, and Al Horford played 67 games for the 76ers in 2020, starting 61 of them. He shot 45% from the field, 35% from 3, but all the counting numbers pretty much went down, averaging 11.9 points per game. This is the same Philly team that ended up getting bounced in round number 1, swept by the Boston Celtics in the bubble. They didn't have Ben Simmons in that series. And then Philadelphia had a salary dump Al Horford in that offseason, trading away a future first-round pick, which was the first-round pick in the 2025 season. Philadelphia was scared they were going to lose in the draft lottery. We knew that it was a top 6 protected pick, but they were able to get the 3rd overall pick, get VJ Edgecombe. Now that pick is top 4 protected to OKC in the 2026 season, and that was a 4-year deal with $109 million. But honestly, another terrible deal. Kemba Walker, who signed from the Charlotte Hornets to the Boston Celtics because Boston lost their point guard in Kyrie Irving when he went to Brooklyn, so they gave him a 4-year $140 million contract, maybe the worst move from Boston in the last decade. Kemba would go on to play 2 years for the Boston Celtics, 56 games in 2020 when Boston lost to Miami in the conference finals, and then played 43 games for the Celtics in 2021 when Boston lost in 5 to the Brooklyn Nets in that series. And then Boston did what Philly did, and they had to salary dump Kemba Walker by trading away a future first-round pick. So you guessed it, the Oklahoma City Thunder. That first-rounder actually ended up being Alperen Sengun in a separate trade, but they got back Al Horford at least in that deal. Was a vital part of their 2024 championship roster. And one more honorable mention from the 2019 free agency period, Kawhi Leonard, who signed a 3-year, $103 million contract with the LA Clippers. But not only did this move make the Clippers trade away a future MVP in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, they didn't get more than 1 conference finals win out of this over the next 5+ years. And now we're in this whole Kawhi Leonard aspiration scandal 6 years later. So there really wasn't like a terrible offer in the 2018 free agency period. A lot of teams were pretty much smart start. A lot of the top deals like Chris Paul staying in Houston, LeBron going to LA, Paul George and Jokic re-signing with their teams. And there was just a lot of one-year deals out there. So I'm actually going to go with a technical 2-year deal. Dwight Howard leaving the Brooklyn Nets for the Washington Wizards. This was literally used with a taxpayer mid-level exception, so it's not a terrible deal whatsoever, but Dwight Howard played 9 games for the Wizards in 2019 and then was traded by the Wizards to the Memphis Grizzlies for CJ Miles in the summer of 2019 and then was waived a month later. Dwight Howard really had a weird end to his career, playing for so many different teams. Now we're getting into like the golden age of just horrible, horrendous free agency contracts. 2017, there's 3 names that I want to bring to the table. Gordon Hayward going from Utah to Boston. It never really worked out, but also kind of out of their control where he had that freak injury in game 1 of the 2018 season. The New York Knicks gave Tim Hardaway Jr. a $70 million contract across 4 years. This would be the mention if it wasn't for the other New York team, the Brooklyn Nets, giving Otto Porter a 4-year, $106 million contract that the Washington Wizards were then forced to match. And then a year and a half later at the 2019 trade deadline, he was traded to the Chicago Bulls for Jabari Parker, Bobby Portis, and a future second rounder that ended up being Tristan Vukcevic, but I think this was the worst contract at the time. Just Otto Porter getting over $25 million a year, which is just crazy to look back on. And here's the apex mountain of bad free agency contracts, 2016. So many that I have to mention here. Andre Drummond getting a 5-year, $127 million contract to the Detroit Pistons. Nick Batum, 5-year, $120 million from the Charlotte Hornets. This one is so bad. Hassan Whiteside got 4 years, $98 million to return to the Heat. Harrison Barnes, 4 years, $94 million to leave Golden State to go to Dallas. Chandler Parsons, 4 years, $94 million from the Dallas Mavericks to the Memphis Grizzlies. Alan Krebs stayed in Portland, 4 years, $74 million. Ryan Anderson left New Orleans to go to Houston, 4 years, $80 million. Bismack Biyombo, because of a few playoff games, got $72 million from the Toronto Raptors. Luol Deng also got $72 million across 4 years from the LA Lakers, and they also gave Timothy Mozgov $64 million across 4 years. Evan Turner got $70 million across 4 years from the Trailblazers. Kent Bazemore got that same contract from the Atlanta Hawks. Jan Mahimi got $64 million across 4 years as well. Tyler Johnson got $50 million across 4 years. Courtney Lee, $48 million across 4 years. Just so many bad contracts. Look up the 2016 free agency class. It is just so tough to look at. But I'm going to go with the Chandler Parsons contract to leave Dallas for Memphis as the worst one here. This contract made Chandler Parsons the 15th highest paid player in the NBA. He played 34 games in year 1, 36 games in year 2 of this contract, both of those years ending in season-ending surgeries where he averaged under 8 points per game. He played 25 games in year number 3 in 2019 and then was waived by Memphis. This actually may be one of the worst, if not the worst, free agency contract in NBA history. For 2015, I'm going to go with the Dallas Mavericks, just trying to build one last roster around Dirk Nowitzki that could contend, and they gave Wesley Matthews, the Portland Trailblazer, 4 years, $70 million. Matthews would go on to play 78 games in his first year in Dallas in 2016, shooting 36% from the field and 38% from 3. Year number 2, he shot 39% from the field as well. He did play 73 games. 2019, he finally got to 40% from the field. He shot 40% exactly. And then in 2019, he was included in the Kristaps Porzingis trade. Honorable mentions to Robin Lopez signing with the New York Knicks, Greg Monroe to the Milwaukee Bucks, and Omar Ashi to the Pelicans. I almost went with that one. Not too many really bad contracts in the 2014 free agency class. I'm going with Channing Frye, who left the Phoenix Suns to the Orlando Magic, 4 years, $32 million. Frye would go on to spend a little bit less than half of that contract in Orlando, 75 games with them in 2015. He shot 39% from the field for somebody that's basically 7 feet tall. And then in 2016, he got traded to the Cleveland Cavaliers, but hey, he helped the Cavs win a title that year. Easy one here in 2013, Josh Smith leaving the Atlanta Hawks for the Detroit Pistons, 4 years, $56 million. Smith played 105 games across 1.5 seasons for the Pistons and then got waived and stretched by them, where they essentially had to pay him $5.5 million until 2020, and his field goal percentage dropped by 6.5 percentage points. It was a disaster signing for the Motor City. I mean, I don't know what we expected. They were playing Josh Smith, Greg Monroe, and Andre Drummond at the same time when there was something called three-point shooting that was taking over the NBA. I hate to do this because this is my favorite player of all time, but Steve Nash is going to take the reins for the worst contract signed in 2012. Nash signed a 3-year, $27 million million deal with the LA Lakers, and we had that super team: Kobe, Pau Gasol, Dwight Howard, and Steve Nash. But Steve Nash's back and neck was not holding up. He only played 50 games for the Lakers in 2013 as a 38-year-old, and then 15 games for the Lakers in 2014 as a 39-year-old, where he shot 38% from the field that season and averaged 6.5 points. Darren Williams almost getting $100 million from the Nets, and Gerald Wallace getting $40 million from Brooklyn also could be mentioned. In the summer of 2011, the Sacramento Kings gave Chuck Hayes a 4-year deal with $21 million, a decent chunk of change at that time. He averaged 3.2 points in 54 games for the Kings in 2012, and then in 2013, he actually averaged 2.7 points across 74 games. They actually tried voiding that 4-year, $21 million, saying he failed a physical right out of the lockout, but then specialists said he was cleared to play, so the Kings actually gave him $1 million more. All that for 2.8 points across 2.5 seasons. 3 nominations here for the 2010 free agency period. This was the one where LeBron James and Chris Bosh went to the Miami Heat. You could talk about the New York Knicks, who missed out on LeBron James, and they signed Amari Stoudemire to a massive 5-year, $99 million contract. Stoudemire played like an MVP candidate in the first year with the Knicks in 2011. Then they traded for Carmelo Anthony, and then injuries derailed the rest of the contract. 47 games in 2012, 29 games in 2013, 65 games in 2014. Then they bought him out in 2015. Basically one good year out of a 5-year, $100 million contract. Joe Johnson signed a 6-year deal with Atlanta worth more than $20 million a year. And the Hawks were lucky because he was not the player he was when he signed that contract, but the Nets' incompetent ownership traded for him in the 2012 offseason. But I'm going to go with Travis Outlaw, who the Nets gave a 5-year, $35 million contract in 2010. He played 1 year in New Jersey before the Nets bought out the remaining 4 years of the contract and paid him over $20 million for the remaining 4 years till 2015. 82 games across a 5-year contract, and he shot 37% from the field. I'm going to make a duo selection for the 2009 free agency class by the Detroit Pistons, where they gave Ben Gordon $55 million across 5 years and Charlie Villanueva $40 million over 5 years as well. And this basically set the franchise back. They won 59 games in 2008, 39 games in 2009, and they panicked after a round 1 exit. And then over the next 3 years, they won 27 games, 30 games, 25 games, and basically didn't reach 40 wins until 2016. So Emeka Okafor and Elton Brand signing in 2008 could definitely take the cake here, but this is why I wanted to talk about some re-signings. Gilbert Arenas was a free agent in 2008, and this is arguably one of the worst contracts in NBA history. He got 6 years, $111 million from the Wizards in 08. Now, this is a tremendous story, right? The 31st overall pick in the 2001 draft was a good player for the Warriors and an even better player after that for the Washington Wizards, but they bought in at the highest point. He averaged 28 points, 8th in MVP voting in 2007. He was banged up in 2008 as well, but they didn't care. He would go on to play 2 games in 2009 and then played in only 55 games across 3 seasons, averaging 20 points and 6 assists, but then was suspended 50 games by the NBA after violating the league's personal conduct policy, and that was because he brought in unloaded guns to the Wizard locker room after an argument with a teammate. Just imagine if that happened today. Somebody brought in a gun to the locker room. Adam Silver would probably ban them for life. I don't know. It's not the worst deal here. It is a massive one, though. In the summer of 2007, when the Orlando Magic gave Rashard Lewis a 6-year, $118 million contract. Now, Rashard Lewis was a fine player in Orlando, but not for that price tag. In 2008, he averaged 18 points and shot 40% from 3. He was an all-star in 2009, shooting 43% from the field and 39% from 3. But then his play declined in 2010 and then was traded in 2011. So it's maybe similar to the Amari Stoudemire contract. It was a massive one. You got a good year or two out of it, and then it turned into a total disaster. 2006, the Chicago Bulls ended up signing an eventual Hall of Fame big man, one of the best undrafted players in NBA history, Ben Wallace, who was a vital part of the 2004 Pistons championship roster. But he was not the same player in Chicago than he was in Detroit. He played a little over 1 full season with the Bulls, averaging 5.9 points, 9.9 rebounds, and 1.9 blocks per game. He was then traded to the Cavs in the middle of the 2008 season and went on to play the final 2 years in Cleveland before returning to Detroit to finish out his career. Just not a wise use of money by Jerry Reinsdorf after the Michael Jordan era. 2005, there's some really bad contracts. Larry Hughes, Bobby Simmons, but nope, it's going to be a duo answer here again for my New York Knicks. I told you we were going to be mentioning them a lot in this video. We've talked about Evan Fournier, Joakim Noah, Amari Stoudemire was briefly mentioned. Yeah, we're going to talk about them giving out a lot of money to 2 big men, Eddie Curry, and Jerome James. The Knicks gave Jerome James, the big man, 5 years, $30 million in 2005 because he had an impressive couple game playoff run with the Seattle Supersonics, averaging around 12 points and 5 rebounds in those playoffs. It's very similar to what the Orlando Magic did with Bismack Biyombo a decade later. James would go on to average around 5 points and 3 rebounds for the Knicks in the regular season. Great job, Isaiah Thomas, but he's not done just there. They also paid Eddie Curry 6 years, $56 million in 2005. This is the first year I became a Knicks fan. I had no idea what free agency was at that time. Poor 5-year-old me didn't know that he was just watching a dysfunctional franchise happen after so much success in the 1990s. Eddie Curry refused to go under testing on his heart with the Bulls, which allowed him to now be a full-on free agent in 2005. The Knicks gave him a bag at the time. He would go on to spend all 5 years in New York, averaging 15 points and 6 rebounds. He shot 56% from the field, but even though with those solid numbers, he did not live up to the hype of the contract whatsoever. The Knicks actually benched him after he showed up to training camp out of shape in 2007. And I know Eddie Curry had a lot of stuff happen to him off the court, which is really unfair. It was just 2 deals that kind of set the franchise back a little bit, and also some other moves as well made by James Dolan. You could talk about Stephon Marbury going to the Knicks in 2004, Eric Dampier to the Mavericks as well, but I'm actually going to talk about the Denver Nuggets and Kenyon Martin, the former #1 overall pick in 2000. He signed a 7-year, $93 million deal in a sign and trade deal where Denver gave up 3 future first-round picks. His first season was solid, averaging 15 points and 7 rebounds, but things did not get better after year number 1. He had a microfracture surgery in the following offseason, and that definitely affected his play. He never averaged more than 13 points in the remaining 6 years of the deal and missed a ton of time because of injuries. He only played 2 games in the 2007 season. He had major knee surgeries, and injuries just overall derailed his career. 2003, we're going to go with the Indiana Pacers giving Jermaine O'Neal a 7-year, $126 million contract. It's wild just to see 7-year deals happen because you can't see them anymore because of the CBA. O'Neal was coming off a season for Indiana where he averaged 20 points and 10 rebounds, shot 48% from the field. He would go on to be a solid player over the next few years, but the back end of this contract was horrible. But he was involved in the malice of the palace. He served a 15-game suspension for punching a fan and then also sprained his shoulder that year. And then he had a major drop-off after the 2008 season, and then they would go on to trade him to the Toronto Raptors. Mark Cuban was maybe one of the first new owner syndrome things to happen in the NBA, where in the summer of 2002, he gave Rafe LaFrentz a 7-year, $70 million contract, in which he would go on to just spend 1 year in Dallas playing 69 games where he averaged 9 points and 5 rebounds, and they traded him to Boston a year later. They had to attach a first-round pick to get off of this contract for Antoine Walker. Here are my Knicks again. In the offseason of 2001, they gave Allen Houston a 6-year deal with $100 million, and I get it, they had to. Just a few years prior, he led them to the NBA Finals as an 8 seed. This was a 6-year deal. In the first 2 years, he was great for the Knicks, but then after that, it turned into one of, if not the worst contracts in the NBA, where injuries hampered his game year by year. He played 77 games in 2002, 82 games in 2003, 50 games in 2004, and just 20 games in 2005, which is a fraction of the player that brought them to the NBA Finals in 1999. And then finally here, in the summer of 2000, the Orlando Magic gave Grant Hill a 7-year deal worth $93 million. He was coming off 5 consecutive top 10 MVP finishes. They also added Tracy McGrady a little bit after that. The NBA thought maybe they had the most lethal duo, and those hopes were short-lived. Injuries pretty much derailed most of Grant Hill's career after that. His first year in Orlando, 4 games. Year 2, 14. Year 3, 29, and didn't play at all because of injury in 2004. He did return to all-star form in a way in 2005, but it was really the last somewhat elite year of his career, and just wasn't the player the Magic thought they were getting from the Detroit Pistons in the 1990s. So that is gonna be for me. I hope you guys did enjoy me taking a trip down memory lane, listing off the worst free agency signing in every offseason since 2000. If you guys did enjoy, I'd appreciate you dropping a thumbs up. Let me know what you guys think is maybe the worst contract that we mentioned in this video, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.